The forest edge glowed faintly under a winter moon, its pale silvery light casting an ethereal sheen across the snow-laden trees that stretched into the horizon like silent, frost-covered sentinels guarding ancient secrets. The branches, heavy with ice and snow, drooped wearily under their burden, their shadows stretching long and jagged across the frozen ground, a mosaic of dark and light that pulsed with the forest's ancient rhythm, as if the earth itself breathed in the cold. A bitter wind howled through the towering pines, carrying the sharp, crisp scent of ice mingled with the earthy aroma of decaying leaves buried deep beneath the drifts, a fragrance that spoke of life lost to winter's grip. In the distance, the faint, ominous moan of an approaching storm rumbled, a threat that grew with each passing moment, promising to erase all traces of their path with its relentless fury. The old cabin, their father's retreat from a world that had claimed him 2 years ago in a sudden, crushing heart attack that left their mother weeping for months, lay hidden deeper within, a fragile promise of warmth and safety in the encroaching blizzard. Simon, 17, trudged through the drifts, his boots sinking deep into the powdery snow with each laborious, exhausting step, the crunching sound a rhythmic lament beneath his labored breaths that echoed in the stillness. His dark hair, once neatly combed with care by his mother's gentle hands, was now matted with frost, clinging to his forehead in damp, icy strands that stung his skin with every gust of wind, a constant reminder of the cold seeping into his soul and the weight of responsibility he bore. His breath fogged in the frigid air, each exhale a fleeting cloud of despair that dissipated into the night, a fleeting echo of his own mortality that mirrored the fragility of their journey. His heavy coat, patched and worn from years of use, offered little comfort against the chill that gnawed at his bones, a mirror to the dread settling in his chest as he bore the weight of protecting Peter through this perilous, storm-ravaged trek. Peter, 13, his younger brother, carried a lantern, its warm amber glow a fragile beacon that pushed back the oppressive darkness with a trembling, hopeful light that flickered like a candle in a storm. His cheeks were rosy from the biting wind, flushed with the excitement of their adventure, and his wide blue eyes sparkled with a childlike wonder that seemed untouched by the storm's growing menace, an innocence Simon envied and feared for. He hummed a soft, haunting tune their mother used to sing, a lullaby of stars and seas, its melody weaving through the air like a thread of hope, a sound that carried memories of warmer nights. His voice trembling slightly but filled with an unshakable optimism, oblivious to the danger lurking beneath the snow-covered ground that hid treacherous crevasses whispered about in local lore. The brothers shared a quiet strength, a bond forged in the crucible of their father's absence after his sudden death had left the family shattered, a void that echoed in every silent room of their modest home where his tools still gathered dust. Simon, the protector, had stepped into that void with a steady hand and a forced smile, guiding Peter through life's storms with a patience he often had to muster from deep within, a role thrust upon him too soon. Peter, with his boundless curiosity and infectious laughter that could turn the coldest day into a memory of warmth, kept Simon's spirit alive, their secret language of glances and inside jokes. A nod here, a grin there. A lifeline that tethered them to happier times amidst their shared grief. A code born from necessity. That night they sought the old cabin, a refuge from the storm closing in with relentless fury, its howl a chorus of despair that seemed to mock their fragile hopes with every gust. The wind grew sharper, slicing through their coats with icy blades that cut to the bone, a relentless assault that tested their resolve. And the snow fell thicker, blanketing the path in a white haze that obscured their footing and turned the world into a featureless void where landmarks vanished. Simon gripped Peter's shoulder with a firm hand, his fingers numb but determined, urging him to keep pace as the forest swallowed the last faint traces of daylight, leaving them in a world of shadow and sound where every snap of a branch was a potential threat, every gust a whisper of doom that chilled his blood. Peter's laughter filled the silence, a bright, melodic sound that cut through the storm's growl like a ray of sunlight piercing a cloudy sky. A sound so pure it seemed to defy the cold and the danger lurking ahead with its innocent joy. He skipped ahead, the lantern swinging in his mittened hands, casting dancing shadows that leaped across the snow like playful spirits, their forms twisting and turning with each step in a ballet of light and dark that seemed to mock the storm's menace. "Bet I can beat you to the cabin," he called, his voice full of challenge, his small frame darting forward with the energy of a deer, his breath puffing in excited bursts as he glanced back with a grin, unaware of the peril that awaited just beyond the next drift, a danger Simon felt but could not name. Simon led the way, his voice steady despite the rising unease coiling in his gut like a serpent, a cold dread he fought to suppress with every ounce of willpower drawn from memories of his father's strength. "Stay close, Pete," he warned, his eyes scanning the uneven terrain for hidden dangers, roots, rocks, or the treacherous crevasses he'd heard tales of from the old woodsman who spoke of the forest's hidden teeth with wary respect. He promised warmth and safety ahead, a lie he hoped would hold true as the blizzard tightened its grip, his words a mantra to keep his own fear at bay as the wind whipped snow into his face, stinging his eyes and blurring his vision with tears of cold and dread. The cabin loomed ahead, its roof sagging under the weight of snow that threatened to collapse it under the storm's relentless pressure, its wooden frame groaning with each gust, a testament to time's wear. Its windows were dark and hollow like the eyes of a forgotten giant staring into the void of loss, their glass cracked and clouded with frost, offering no welcome. A flicker of hope sparked in Simon's chest as he saw the faint outline, a sanctuary within reach after hours of struggle through the storm's wrath, its wooden walls a promise of respite from the cold that gnawed at his spirit and the guilt that haunted his steps. Peter quickened his pace, his breath puffing in excited bursts, eager to be inside where the fire would crackle and the cold would fade, his lantern light bouncing with his steps like a heartbeat. As they approached, the wind howled with renewed fury, a banshee's wail that drowned out their footsteps and turned the air into a maelstrom of snow and sound, a chaotic symphony of nature's rage that seemed to rise in pitch. The snow blinded their path, a swirling curtain of white that stung their skin and obscured the cabin's details, reducing it to a ghostly shape in the distance that seemed to recede with every step, a mirage of safety. Simon shielded his face with an arm, shouting for Peter to stay near, his voice lost to the wind, leaving only the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears like a drum of impending doom, a rhythm of fear that quickened with each breath. Peter stumbled, his foot catching on a hidden root buried beneath the snow, a trap set by nature itself with cruel intent, its gnarled form a silent predator. The lantern slipped from his mittened hands, tumbling end over end in a slow, agonizing arc that seemed to stretch time itself, a moment frozen in horror, before crashing onto the frozen ground with a sharp, heartbreaking sound that echoed through the forest like a death knell, a sound that would haunt Simon's dreams. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering shards that scattered across the snow, its warm amber glow extinguished in an instant, plunging them into near darkness as the storm raged on. The loss of light a harbinger of worse to come, a symbol of hope destroyed in a single fateful moment. Simon turned, his heart lurching into his throat as he saw Peter teeter on the edge of a hidden crevasse, its presence masked by the snow like a predator lying in wait with silent menace, its maw yawning wide. "Peter!" he shouted, his voice raw with panic, a cry that tore from his lungs with the force of a wounded animal, a sound that carried his desperation into the void. But before he could move, the ground gave way beneath his brother. Peter's cry was cut short as he vanished into the dark abyss, the sound swallowed by the storm's roar, leaving only silence where his laughter had been, a void that swallowed Simon's hope and replaced it with terror. Simon scrambled toward the edge, his fingers clawing at the snow with desperate ferocity, his nails breaking against the ice as he dug through the frozen layers with a strength born of terror and love. His screams echoed, unanswered, a primal wail that reverberated off the trees and returned to him as a mocking echo, a sound that seemed to mock his helplessness. As the realization sank in, Peter was gone. The crevasse loomed like a wound in the earth, a silent thief that had stolen his brother, leaving only a void where light and love had once resided, a chasm that mirrored the one in his heart and grew wider with each passing second. The rescue team arrived at dawn, their lights piercing the fading storm like stars reborn, their beams cutting through the snow to reveal the devastation with clinical precision, a stark contrast to the chaos of the night. They pulled Simon from the edge, his body shaking with cold and despair, his hands stained with blood from his frantic digging, his coat torn from the struggle against the unyielding snow, a testament to his futile fight. Peter's body was found hours later, still beneath the ice, his lifeless form a final, crushing blow to Simon's shattered heart, a sight that would haunt him with every breath he took in the days, weeks, and years to come. The days after were a hollow silence, broken only by the wails of their mother as she clutched Peter's scarf, its wool still carrying the faint, lingering scent of his hair and the wood smoke from their last fire, a fragrance that filled the room with memories. Simon's hands trembled with guilt, replaying the moment the lantern fell, the sound of breaking glass a relentless echo that played on loop in his mind, a soundtrack to his torment that drowned out all else. He saw Peter's face in every shadow, a constant accusation that gnawed at his soul, a reminder of his failure etched into the fabric of his being with every sleepless night, every tear shed in the dark. The forest, once their playground of snowball fights, hidden trails and whispered secrets shared under the stars on clear nights, now stood as a graveyard of memories, its trees bearing witness to their loss with silent judgment, their branches heavy with sorrow. The cabin, their goal, remained empty, its promise unfulfilled, its windows staring blankly at the snow like the hollow eyes of a mourner lost to time, its silence a reproach. Simon avoided its sight, the pain too raw, the silence too loud, a reminder of the brother he'd failed to protect, a failure that echoed in every step he took away from the woods, each footprint a mark of his shame etched into the snow. He saw Peter in every snowflake, a ghost in the winter stillness, his brother's face forming in the intricate patterns of frost that coated the windows of their home, a vision that lingered with every glance. The crevasse haunted his dreams, a black maw that refused to release his brother's memory, its edges sharp with regret, pulling him back to that moment of loss with unrelenting force, a nightmare that replayed with every restless sleep. Simon's world narrowed to a single suffocating thought. If only he'd held the lantern tighter, if only he'd seen the crevasse, if only he'd been faster, if only he'd turned back when the storm first whispered its threat, a litany of if-onlys that tormented him. Memories cut like shards of glass, each one a jagged reminder of what was lost, a kaleidoscope of pain that played behind his closed eyelids with relentless clarity, a gallery of moments he could not escape. He remembered their voices echoing through the trees, their games of tag among the pines, the way Peter's laughter had turned the coldest days warm, a time when joy drowned out the storm and the world was theirs to conquer. A kingdom built on love and trust now reduced to rubble. A castle fallen to the winds of fate. There was the time they'd built a snow fort, stacking walls high with meticulous care, their gloved hands shaping each block with precision, their breaths visible in the cold air, declaring it their castle against an imaginary enemy from a story Peter had invented with wild imagination. Peter had crowned Simon king with a twig tiara, his small hands trembling with excitement as he placed it on his brother's head, their laughter ringing through the trees until the fort collapsed in a powdery heap, leaving them breathless and giggling in the snow, a moment frozen in time that now brought tears. Another memory. Peter's first campfire, where he'd struggled to light the kindling with shaking hands, his breath puffing in the cold air, his face a mask of concentration as he fumbled with the matches. Simon had guided him, their fingers brushing as the flame caught with a sputter and a crackle, a small victory celebrated with a cheer, and Peter's wide eyes reflected the fire as he exclaimed, "We're wizards now!" A moment of magic now lost to the void of Simon's grief. A spell broken by the storm's cruel hand. A memory that stung with its absence. Simon avoided the forest, the crevasse a scar on his soul. Its image burned into his mind like a brand that seared with every thought. A wound that refused to heal. The sound of wind through the branches became Peter's voice, calling him back to that fateful night. A siren song of guilt that lured him toward despair with each rustle, each whisper a dagger to his heart. He locked himself in his room, drowning in regret, the broken lantern's image a constant companion in the darkness, its shards a mirror to his broken spirit, reflecting a face he could no longer recognize, a stranger forged in loss. His mother's tears fell silently, her hands trembling as she cooked meals he couldn't eat, her kitchen a mausoleum of grief where the clatter of pots was the only sound, a hollow percussion against the walls of their sorrow. "He loved you," she whispered one night, her voice cracking with the weight of her own loss, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading for connection, but her words fell into silence, unable to bridge the chasm his guilt had carved between them. A gulf widened by her own unspoken pain and the memories she too carried. One night, exhaustion dragged him under, his body giving in to the weight of sorrow that pressed down like a physical force, a burden that crushed his spirit with every breath, a weight that bent his shoulders. His dreams became a frozen nightmare, the crevasse opening wide, pulling him into its depths, Peter's face pleading from the darkness as the snow buried them both. A scene that replayed with relentless cruelty, each detail etched deeper into his psyche, a torment that offered no escape. In the dream the lantern glowed again, its light steady and warm, a golden halo that pushed back the storm with a gentle radiance that seemed to heal the wounds of the night with its soft embrace. Peter's voice was a whisper in the dark, soft and familiar, calling Simon's name from the shadows of the forest, a lifeline in the cold, a sound that stirred hope in the depths of his despair, a beacon that drew him forward through the snow and ice of his guilt. Simon reached out, tears freezing on his cheeks in crystalline trails that glistened like diamonds in the lantern's light, a beauty born of pain, and saw Peter's form solid before him. 13 again, Peter stood with that same mischievous grin, his lantern held high unbroken, its light casting a circle of warmth around them in the dream's embrace. A sanctuary amidst the storm, a moment of reunion that felt more real than the waking world, a vision that offered a fleeting peace. "Why did I fail you?" Simon cried, his voice breaking in the dream, his hands trembling as he reached for his brother, the words a confession torn from his soul, a plea for forgiveness he feared would never come, a cry that echoed in the vastness of his regret. Peter stepped closer, his eyes kind and steady, reflecting the lantern's glow like twin stars. "It wasn't your fault, Simon," he said, his voice a balm to the pain that had consumed him, a promise of redemption in the stillness, a gift freely given. "But I let the lantern fall," Simon whispered, his hands shaking with the memory of that shattering sound, the image of glass exploding into the snow, a wound that never healed, a scar on his conscience that bled with every thought. "I should have saved you." Peter shook his head, his smile gentle and unwavering, a light in the darkness that pierced Simon's despair. "You gave me light while you could," he replied, his words a quiet absolution that eased the burden on Simon's heart, a release from the chains of guilt that had bound him. Peter's gaze was gentle, filled with a wisdom beyond his years, his eyes reflecting the lantern's glow like twin stars in the night sky of the dream, a celestial guide. "The storm took me, not you," he said softly, his voice a whisper against the wind that rustled through the imagined trees, a breeze of forgiveness. "Carry me in your heart, Simon, and let me go. Let yourself live for both of us, for the dreams we shared under this forest's canopy, for the laughter that once filled our days." Simon woke, the dream fading into the gray dawn, a fragile peace settling in his chest where guilt had reigned supreme for months, a tentative truce with his pain that felt like a fragile thread. The weight lifted slightly, replaced by a faint resolve to honor Peter's memory, the whisper of forgiveness lingering in his mind like a soft melody, a guide through the darkness that had enveloped his life since that night, a light that flickered but held. The next day he returned to the forest, a new lantern in his hands, its glass gleaming with a hesitant promise that trembled in the morning light, a fragile hope reborn from the ashes of his despair. The crevasse was still there, a silent wound in the earth, its edges sharp and unforgiving, a scar that mirrored his own, but he stood at its brink, the light casting long shadows on the snow, a bridge between the past he mourned and the future he feared to face alone, a step toward redemption. He carved Peter's name into a tree, the knife slipping as tears fell, the bark splintering under his trembling hands, each cut a prayer, each tear a release of the sorrow that had pooled within him like a stagnant lake. "I won't forget you," he murmured, the act a silent tribute to his brother's life, a marker of love etched into the wood that would stand against time, a monument to their bond, a testament carved with the hands that had failed to save him. He began writing, pouring his pain onto paper, stories of their shared days filling notebook after notebook, the pages stained with ink and tears, a river of memory that flowed from his pen with each stroke. Each word was a step toward healing, a way to keep Peter's spirit alive, the ink a testament to their bond, a chronicle of love that refused to fade, a legacy written in the quiet of his room where the wind's whisper was his only companion. He taught others to navigate the woods, sharing Peter's lessons on reading the wind, finding shelter, and lighting fires with careful hands, his voice steady as he passed on the wisdom of a boy lost too soon, a teacher born of tragedy. The children's laughter reminded him of better times, their wide eyes a mirror to Peter's wonder, a healing balm that softened the edges of his grief, a chorus of new life amidst his loss, a sound that echoed with hope. One winter, he lit a bonfire at the forest's edge, inviting the town to join in a vigil that stretched into the night, the flames leaping high against the dark sky, a beacon of memory. Memories warmed the air, stories of Peter's pranks and dreams filling the space with light, the flames dancing like his lost laughter, each tale a thread in the tapestry of remembrance, a communal act of mourning and celebration that drew tears and smiles, a ritual of healing. The pain remained, a constant ache in his chest, a dull throb that woke him at night with the memory of Peter's fall. a wound that refused to close completely, a scar that pulsed with every heartbeat. But it shaped his strength, a forge of resilience that tempered his spirit with each trial, and Simon learned to carry it, a reminder of love lost and the courage it demanded, a burden that became a source of power, a fire that warmed his resolve. Simon found solace in the silence, Peter's presence a quiet guide in the rustle of leaves, the crack of ice underfoot, the whisper of the wind through the pines, a symphony of nature that spoke his brother's name. The forest, once a place of terror, became a sanctuary of remembrance, a cathedral where every tree held a memory, every shadow a reflection of his brother, a sacred space where he could feel close to Peter again, a haven carved from loss. In time he forgave himself, the dream's words echoing in his mind like a prayer recited in the stillness, a mantra that grew stronger with each repetition, a litany of grace. He honored Peter's memory with every step, every breath, the lantern's light a symbol of their enduring connection, a flame that burned brighter with each passing year, a light that guided his path forward through the shadows of doubt. The community gathered each year, lighting lanterns at the forest's edge in a solemn ritual that drew tears and smiles alike, a tradition born from Simon's grief and nurtured by shared loss. The glow was a tribute to Peter, a collective act of healing, their faces illuminated by the shared weight of sorrow, a mosaic of light against the dark, a beacon that united them in their grief and their hope, a light that grew with each passing season. Peter's laughter lived in the wind, a promise never broken, a sound Simon heard in the rustle of leaves, the whisper of snow against the pines, the gentle sigh of the forest at dawn, a melody that danced through the trees. It was a connection unbroken by death, a thread of joy in the silence, a song that played in his heart when the world grew still, a harmony that refused to fade, a gift from beyond the grave. Simon learned that loss leaves a void, but it can be filled with love's enduring light, a radiance that grew with each act of kindness, each story told, each child taught, each tree planted in memory. He carried that light forward, a legacy of his brother, a flame that warmed the coldest nights and guided the lost, a torch passed from one generation to the next, a beacon that shone in the darkest hours. The shattered lantern, though gone, lived on in him, its glow becoming his courage, a beacon he lit anew with every act of compassion, helping a neighbor clear snow, teaching a child to carve wood with patient hands, planting a sapling in Peter's name each spring. It guided him through the dark days, a symbol of resilience forged in tragedy, a light that shone even in the deepest shadows, a flame that burned with the strength of memory. The forest whispered Peter's name, a gentle reminder of their bond, its voice soft in the stillness, a chorus of leaves and wind that spoke of love and loss, a hymn that rose with the morning mist. Simon smiled through his tears, knowing his brother was never truly lost, only transformed into the light that filled his days, a presence that lingered in every breath he took, a spirit that danced in the sunlight filtering through the trees. In the end, Simon found peace, the echoes of silence transformed into a song of love, forever lighting his way, a melody carried on the winter wind, a harmony of loss and redemption that played through the seasons with every rustle of leaves. It was a testament to the brother who lived on in his soul, a legacy etched into the forest, the cabin, the lanterns that glowed each year, a story that would endure as long as memory held, a light that would guide him and others through the storms yet to come.